Hey nerds, return with us to Middle-earth as we review and discuss The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2, starting now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Paula.
As always, if you want to jump ahead of the intro to our analysis or rating, see the chapter links below. The way that we're going to do this, since they drop 3 episodes, is that we'll dive into each episode, and then we'll probably break this conversation up into different videos so that you guys can digest all the information. We are going to give you a spoiler-free logline for the episode, then give you a rating for each episode, and then we're going to start talking about spoilers. All right, so episode 2, which we don't have a title for, I assume, by the time this actually debuts, they'll have some titles for them. We're reviewing this, by the way, or we're talking about this on Monday. All right, so the spoiler-free logline for episode 2 is, in this gripping episode, alliances are tested and destinies are forged as Galadriel races to prevent Sauron's deceit during the faces personal and literal darkness in Khazad-dûm, and the stranger grapples with his emerging powers while danger closes in. Across Middle-earth, the shadow of Sauron looms large, threatening to the unwary in a web of manipulation and betrayal. This is directed by Brändström and Louise and written by Jason Cahill. So, Paula, what did you think of the second episode of season 2?
I really love watching the dwarf.
The dwarfs, yeah, they're a highlight for me too. Yeah,
so anytime they have a scene, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I like Dissa and Durin's relationship is sweet and also funny.
Yeah.
They bicker at each other, but they love each other. Yeah, they're great. Yeah, it's a good episode. A lot more happens in this. We jump around a lot more because we're adding Khazad-dûm to the mix. Basically, in the last episode, we were just jumping back and forth between Rhûn and Lindon mostly, and then we got to the Eregion at the end of that episode. But now Eregion is also in the mix too. So there's a lot more jumping around. There's a lot more scenes in this episode, even though I don't think it's a lot longer. It's just that the scenes are shorter. But yeah, and also the first episode had that long prequel thing, basically, of showing you Sauron being destroyed and also regenerating himself. So how would you rate the second episode?
I will give it an 8.
Give it an 8? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm gonna rate it a 7 at dinner party. So you're gonna give it a road trip. So we need to get into the specifics. If you haven't seen the episode, go see the episode because we're gonna spoil it. It's difficult to talk about the episode without talking about the specifics. All right, spoilers ahead. All right, this episode, as noted in the spoiler-free logline, does have elves. So we start in Khazad-dûm, where we left Durin and his wife last season. Durin had a falling out with his father, Durin III, and stripped him of his privileges. So we see them in the market here shopping at a reduced budget, and then there is a cave-in. I think at the beginning of the episode we actually see that what happened at Mordor in the end of the last season, basically the Mount Doom erupting, has finally made an impact. It traveled up north to Khazad-dûm and the Misty Mountains and caused cave-ins. So they have light shafts, and they cause cave-ins, and the light shafts all closed, killing a few people, but mostly cutting them off from their crops because they use the light shafts to grow crops inside. So it was a exciting beginning for the episode. Then we jump from Khazad-dûm to Lindon, where Galadriel is having visions of a future. So in her vision, she is planting some seeds for her brother. I think her brother's name is Findor. Planting some seeds for her brother, and then she sees Celebrimbor, and the seeds sprout and impale him. And he says something about the rings that haven't even been created yet. He mentions the dwarf wings and also the men wings, and then he's impaled to the tree, and he says something to the effect that these are the seeds that you planted. So that's why this is happening. I think it's pretty accurate. Like, a lot of this stuff has happened because she was duped by Sauron. Like, there are no Numerians in this episode, but like, they lost a bunch too, and they lost a bunch in last season, all on her say-so. Basically, she convinced them because she's an elf and she's like hundreds of years older, right? She's supposed to be wise, and she was duped by Sauron. So many people died.
Her obsession, she's obsessed with just being righteous, and it doesn't matter who gets hurt or destroyed in the process. It's all about her being right, her being righteous, her knowing better than anything else. It's quite annoying, to be honest.
It is annoying. She got a lot of people killed. I understand, like, she misses her brother. Her brother died, I think, probably at this point 1,000 years ago. Like,
You're right.
Like, because we're like at 1500 right now, and he died at the beginning of at the end of the last age, so like 1,000 years ago, and that's why she wants to kill Sauron. Okay, I understand if you're immortal, I guess it doesn't matter, but she's killed a lot. So like through her actions, she killed a bunch of people, men in the Southlands. She killed a lot of people in the Numenoreans, like elves. I think were the other elves as well with her. I forget if it was just. I think she might have been the only elf, except for Anador, the Sylvan elf that was already out there in the Southlands. But anyway, yeah.
You're right. And then also, she's not always entirely truthful, especially when she makes a mistake. She's always trying to.
Yeah.
It actually has consequences and bigger negative consequences.
Right. Like at the beginning of the last episode, she doesn't tell Celebrimbor or Elrond that it was Sauron until she basically has to chase him from Eregion all the way to Lindon, and then the king has to press her for her to tell the truth, because I don't know if she feels shame or whatever, but yeah, until he commands her to tell him. He basically says, you're dancing around it. What exactly?
Right. Like, put it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty obvious to see what's going to happen with. It's pretty obvious. And all because she simply did not tell him.
Yeah, she could have she could have divulged some information basically, and she didn't, because he has his own issues, and we'll get to his psychological issues later on. But if she had just given him some information, if she wasn't trying to hide things because she felt ashamed by being seduced by the man that she was mega maniacally trying to capture in the first place. She not only was seduced by him, I think she was starting to like have feelings for him. And like her husband is still out there somewhere. I don't know if she thinks that he's dead as well, but technically she's married. But yeah, he seduced her. She fell hard for him. It's so ironic that this is the guy that she was trying to kill. In the first, she spent all this time, mobilized armies to try to kill this guy, and he tricked her the entire season. And I would feel a little ashamed too, but yeah, should have offered that information without having to be chased from. Eregion and Lindon are in the same region, but they are far apart. She had to have her chase him all the way across basically the region back to Lindon to have the king force her to tell him the truth. Yeah, she's special. Also, this is in this scene after this, the king asks her about it, and she tells him that she's seeing the future. He says that he's seeing the future too. She says that she wants to go to Eregion to check on Celebrimbor, because they haven't heard back from him yet. If you remember in the first episode, they sent a messenger and they haven't heard back from him yet. And he's absolutely not. You can't go self. You can't go by yourself. You obviously were like corrupted by Sauron. You need to, at this point you're susceptible to his influence. I'm liking Gil-galad more this season. They didn't give him much to do, and it wasn't really clear like why he's king, but he's making rational decisions. He sided with her situationally in the first episode because there was a dire situation and they needed the rings, but he's not like he's blinded to her malfeasance and her issues. So yeah, that conversation with her was interesting. And so then we jump over to Eregion, where Celebrimbor denies Halbrand an audience because Galadriel said that he shouldn't
deal with.
He shouldn't treat with. That's all she said.
Right.
She didn't give any specifics. However, he doesn't know the reason. She doesn't want him to speak to him, like we just discussed. Meanwhile, it appears that we see a scene. The messengers are killed by orcs. Now, it's unclear whether or not this is something that Halbrand/Sauron set up, because he doesn't necessarily have control of orcs. We don't actually see any orcs, right? We hear like orcish sounds, and then we see the elves like dead, and we see the message like broken, but we don't actually see orcs. So maybe he just paid some people to kill them. I don't know. So that message with the information he's Sauron is never going to get there. Yeah. Then we jump over to Western Rhûn and something called Carcass Gaer. I actually looked this up. This is not a thing that exists inside of the Tolkien lore. I think they basically took two elvish words, dreadful and fortress, and then just put them together. This character also doesn't show up in the books either. So there are a bunch of wizards that Tolkien wrote about who he said went to the east, the blue wizards, but he doesn't write about any of the specifics. So I guess they're filling in what happened to the blue wizards, and they actually cast someone called the Dark Wizard this season. So we see an Easterling approaching this fortress in Rhûn, and this wizard uses his magic to basically get a report from his acolyte, and the acolyte tells tells him that Sauron is amassing power and he's taking on a new form. And then she says that she wasn't able to subdue the Istar. Istar is another term for wizard. If you remember back for first season, Gandalf or the Stranger was like basically disintegrated her into butterflies. And the Easterling, the tracker that we saw at the beginning of the scene, comes in and he says that he can capture the Ishtar. And the Dark Wizard asks how does he think he's going to be able to do that when his acolytes with power couldn't do that. And he says basically, I'm going to kill the halflings if he doesn't give himself up. There's a little bit of an exchange here where they say, if you do this for us, can you get the curse of our flesh, remove the curse of our on our flesh? So I don't know if he's cursed them. That's why they're all wearing masks. I guess we'll find out at some point in the future.
Yeah, it seems like that's what it is. Because they're all covered, wearing masks. You can't see any of their skin. So I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Also, and then we jump to a scene in Rhûn with Nori, Poppy, and the Stranger. They discuss his name and they try to find a path to save time, but that path would lead through a wasteland where they'd run out of water. However, the tracker and his hunting party catch up with them and they hide, but they're forced to go through the wasteland anyway to escape from them. Then we go from there back to Khazad-dûm, and the gardens are withering because of the sun shafts being closed. And Disa and her stone singers enter King Durin's throne room where he's getting a report on the cave-ins. And the report basically is that they think that this is interesting what they call a volcano. They say that a fire mountain awoke in the south, causing the sun shafts to collapse. So they need to dig new shafts, but they use the stone singers to figure out where it is safe to dig, and no stone singers have been able to find a safe path. So Disa is confident in her abilities and she sings with her fellow stone singer, but they can't find the light either. And so Durin instructs the digger to just dig without guidance and dig carefully. So they're probably going to lose a lot of people with cave-ins. I think this scene actually ends with Disa talking to Durin about being the bigger man, basically, and talking to his son to try to patch up their relationship. They're both very stubborn. So yeah, and then we jump over to a scene with Durin IV. He's doing some manual labor now because his privilege have been removed and he got calluses and they started to make fun of him. And he thought that he was going to be able to stand up to them, but they basically tease and harass him and beat on him. And then they have a scene with Disa and Durin where Disa does basically the same thing that she did with the king, asking him to stop being stubborn and talk to his father because she's concerned. I think she's very confident in her abilities and her abilities are not working. I think the next scene that we see is back in Lindon where Galadriel tries to convince Elrond to go with her to Eregion, basically because the king won't let her go by herself because he feels she's compromised. And I talked about this a little bit earlier when we talked about the last episode. He's basically still bitter and he basically thinks her vanity and hubris allowed her to be deceived by Sauron. He's also upset as her friend that she deceived him about Sauron, like we were talking about earlier, because of her shame. So I don't think they end this episode. He comes around at the end of this episode, but I don't think he's forgiven her. He's still pissed off at her by the end of this episode. But we do see him seeking counsel from Sauron, the shipwright, about his concerns about the rings, and the counsel that he gave is that it's good that he's vigilant, but he shouldn't judge the work by its maker. And he advises that he should guide his friend if he believes they have gone astray. I think there's some good advice generally. Although, if you know the books, the rings aren't compromised because Sauron actually didn't touch anything. He was just there and he was like giving him information, but he didn't actually touch any of these rings. The rings that he compromises are the ones later on. But I understand his concern. His concern is like a rational concern. Very rational concern. I
wonder sometimes if Eregion is the only one that seems to have more reason than anyone else because he is half-elf.
Yeah, he's a half-elf. Yeah, maybe. I guess his full name is Elrond half-elf, and I think it's maternal grandfather and his paternal great-grandfather are human. But yeah, I may have mixed those up, maybe the other way around. But it's great-grandfather and his grandfather, but I don't know if it's maternal or paternal on the other side. So I think that in this conversation, Círdan says that he's right to be weary, right? But he also you have to balance your weariness with the potential good that the rings can cause. So I don't think that the other people are completely blind. They just aren't as quick to throw away something that could be a possible good for the realm, because they definitely would have had to leave as the tree was dying. I think he's just more cautious than most, which I think is not a bad thing. Then we get back to Rhûn. Nori, Poppy, and the stranger are walking across the wasteland, out of water. The stranger collapses. They find a well and they get him some water, but the well has an alarm on it. It's a very interesting design, basically with a bell on it, and it alerts the Easterling hunters who catch up with them. The stranger uses his powers again, but again, he can't control his powers. So he creates a maelstrom. I think he does push the Easterlings away, but he also, Poppy and Nori also blow away in the maelstrom as well. They get caught in it. And I think he's searching for a staff like that. In the first episode, we see when he was having those visions, he has like visions of a staff, and this one disintegrates. So this isn't it. I think he's searching for something to basically focus his powers so that they don't go wild like this. I think that's what they're hinting at here. Then we jump to Eregion, and instead of sending a messenger this time, because he's been sending a messenger basically to tell Halbrand to leave, Celebrimbor goes and tells Halbrand that he can't treat with him, and if he doesn't leave, he's gonna remove him. And Halbrand, he starts his manipulation basically. He starts telling him things that he wants to hear, telling him that Galadriel changed her mind. So that was an outright lie. But everything after that isn't quite a lie. He also manipulates him by stroking his ego and telling him that Elven rings worked because he didn't get any notice from the Lindon that they worked. So he's very proud of his achievement there. He also says they got what they wanted, and the makers like us don't get the recognition that we deserve. He's basically manipulating him and stroking his pride and his vanity. He's a very prideful, vain man and a self-important man. But he wants to be known for the great things like his grandfather was, who created the Cimmerels of the trees.
Yeah, Sauron is essentially able to see within you what your
desires are. Yeah,
desires are, and then he's able to just
play with them.
Right.
Yeah. So it's likely he had, so I think it's likely he had something to do with the death of the messengers, but who knows? But anyway, he invites him in, even though with those lies, and he has a conversation with him, and he basically says that he was sent by the Valar. If you don't know, people watching are basically the gods in this universe, or the kind of lesser gods in this universe. So he's saying that he was a messenger. So the Valar do send messengers. They sent the Ishtar. So they sent Gandalf. They sent the Blue Wizards. They sent Radagast. They sent Saruman to Middle Earth. They technically sent them to Middle Earth in the Third Age, not the Second Age, so they changed it a little bit for this show. They also send eagles, so they do send messengers sometimes. So he's incredulous about this though. He doesn't believe that he's actually sent by the Valar. And he promises that with his help, he'll be revered. He changes into his new form, Lord of Gifts, and takes on the name Anatar. And this actually is the same actor. They just put a bunch of prosthetics on his face. He changed the way that he walked. He changed the way that he spoke. So this is the same exact actor. It wasn't the same actor at the beginning of the first episode. They cast someone for that one, a different person for that one, but this is the same actor. They just put a wig on him, put some prosthetics on his face. Oh. He started talking different and walking different, but it's the same.
That's a good makeup job. I was like, his eyes remind me of Halbrand's eyes.
Yeah, same guy. He's doing a great job. He's killing it in this show. Then we jump to Lindon, where the High King has agreed to let Galadriel go to Eregion, but the condition is that Elrond is now leading the company, which
she did not like that.
She did not like that because she's technically a general, right? And it's like she's quick to point out to him every time they have a conversation. He's just a politician. Yeah. So that's how things are left in Lindon, and then end the episode with Celebrimbor sending a message to Durin IV and his wife Dissa to come to Eregion, and that's the end of the episode. All right, that is what we think, but we want to know what you think. Comment down below with your thoughts, and if you found this review useful, don't forget to like the video and share and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of film and TV, and we will see you in the next one. All right, guys, bye.